Hello everybody, my name is TG Goji, and today we have a very special matchup between two monsters. Actually no, not just monsters, a demon and a vampire. Throughout history, both demons and vampires have been symbols of death, fear, and the recognition that there are forces beyond our understanding. Both monstrous creatures have terrorized humans in many different stories, fairy tales, mythologies, and even religions around the world. But what if we put two extremely popular pop culture characters that both perfectly represented the words demon and vampire in a fight? Well, today we have Alucard from Hellsing and Hellsing Ultimate versus Alastor the Radio Demon from Hazbin Hotel. Who would win in a fight to the death? Well, without further ado, let's get into the matchup. So let's get into Alastor's abilities before we can get into his scaling. He has shapeshifting, size manipulation, portal creation, shield creation, teleportation, as he can teleport people like Husker and Nifty to his location at will, umbrakinesis, as he's able to manipulate shadows as well as transform and move around as a shadow, summoning, as he can summon things like tendrils, living voodoo dolls, etc. He can also use dark magic like voodoo, has electrokinesis, as he can move through TVs as seen in his duet with Vox, and more. However, Alastor's scaling is pretty interesting because even though Hazbin Hotel's first season concluded a few weeks ago, Alastor surprisingly still doesn't have many feats of his own. I mean, aside from destroying Serpentius' warship easily, matching Adam, creating an explosion the size of the hotel, and even fending off the loan sharks in episode 5. But most of his scaling actually includes multiple different scaling notations throughout both Hazbin Hotel and Hell of a Boss that he should ironically scale to. But before we get into that, let's get on to the only real on-screen feat that Alastor has. So in the pilot, Alastor created a massive crater after destroying Serpentius' warship with ease. Calculations for this feat have been done through pixel measurements, which are on screen now. By comparing the height of a single egg boy to Penchus and then comparing him to other characters on screen like Charlie, Angel Dust, and Alastor to then get an accurate look at Serpentius' height. After that, we can measure how Penchus scales to the crater formed, and adding the fragmentation energy of stone, they concluded that Alastor outputted anywhere from 334.4 tons of TNT to 1.03 kilotons of TNT or multi-city block to small town level AP. So as a baseline, Alastor has anywhere from multi-city block level to small town level AP at the very least. But now we have to move on to his scaling notations via the versus other characters. In Hell of a Boss, the Ars Goetia Stolas was able to part a cloud formation in episode 5. Calculations for this feat through pixel measurements range anywhere from 365 kilotons of TNT or large town level to even 1.8 megatons of TNT or small city level. But what does this have anything to do with Alastor? Well, first, let me just address and correct something that many people in the Hazbin and Hell of a Boss community have falsely believed for years now. I don't know who started this whole Stolas wipes the floor with Alastor trend, but I'm here to tell you, that's not true. That is a lie. Alastor does in fact scale to Stolas in some way, and before anyone brings up that dumb livestream where Vivian said Stolas wins against Alastor, well, let's just play the whole clip, shall we?
But this is from Anna. They say, let's change the world. Who is more powerful, Alastor or Stolas?
There's only one right answer to this.
That's a good one. I haven't thought about that. I mean, the way their powers work is different, so it's hard to say. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Stolas, though.
No!
But I don't know. They aren't in the same, direct contact. So I don't know.
No, I have a look. Remember how I killed Penchus with the tentacles? That would absolutely subdue him.
There you have it, right there, by the words of Vibsy Pop herself. Even she was unsure and had to go out on a limb and say who would win, implying that they are indeed comparable or relative at the very least. That should be enough, right? That should confirm that they are both relative to each other, right? But it never is it? Yet people to this day still claim that Stolas scales massively above Alastor and can one-shot him. Now why did they do this? And to that, I genuinely do not know. I could not tell you. Some people just have a hate boner for Alastor or something. And also, let me just clarify. I am not saying that Alastor is stronger than Stolas. I am just saying he is comparable to Stolas. Meaning that yes, any feat performed by Stolas means that Alastor should scale to it in some way. So now that we have confirmed that Alastor and Stolas are relative to each other, let's recap everything on Stolas' side. So using the Stolas side of the scaling, Alastor can reach anywhere from large town level to small city level AP. There are calculations for Stolas' feat in episode 5 being island level, but those were self-admitted by the blogger to be flawed, and he used a more reliable method to scale it in the same post. Now there is one more notation for his power that we have to go over. Atom. And yes, before anyone gets in the comments, I know Alastor lost to Atom. However, Alastor was clearly able to push Atom to some degree and was clearly making him struggle to some capacity in the fight, so it wouldn't really make any sense for Alastor to not scale to him at all. This is important because in the season finale, Atom was able to split the hotel and the ground beneath it. This is impressive because pixel measurements, which are on screen now, place this feat anywhere from 3.12 megatons of TNT or small city level to 375.61 megatons of TNT or mountain level. As to why it's such a high number, the user compared Charlie in pixels to the nearby debris surrounding her as she fell to then compare those measurements to each floor of the hotel and then the hole that Atom created. And by using the energy formulas of pulverization and evaporation, they concluded that the overall yield of Atom's attack is likely much higher than it may look at first because of how much energy it takes to completely pulverize or evaporate an object. And yes, Atom's beams are likely evaporation as he completely disintegrated Pentious' ship with a single blast earlier in the episode. So to recap Alastor's AP, as a low ball he has multi-city block to small town level AP, at a mid ball large town level to small city level, and at a high ball small city level to even mountain level. And since we could say his durability is relative to his AP, we can say that he can survive attacks at this caliber too. Now as for his speed, Alastor should scale above characters like RoboFizz who can dodge semi-automatic rounds from a rifle. Calculations through pixel measurements place this at speeds anywhere from Mach 9.5 to Mach 27.6 or high hypersonic speeds. And yes, he should scale above the average sinner and by proxy imps like Blitz and RoboFizz due to his title as an overlord, but also scaling massively above the average sinner who have been shown to be comparable to imps on the regular. And to further reinforce the notion that Stolas and Alastor are at least relative, Stolas was able to dodge close-range gunfire in Season 2, Episode 4 of Hell of a Boss, so supersonic to hypersonic reaction speeds are very solid. So to summarize everything, Alastor has anywhere from multi-city block to mountain level attack potency, hypersonic to high hypersonic reaction speeds, and multi-city block to mountain level durability. Now that we've covered the radio demon, it's time to move on to the vampire king himself, Alucard. Now before we get into his scaling, Alucard has a long list of abilities making him incredibly broken. However, keep in mind that we will not be using post-Schrodinger Alucard because then this matchup would be entirely pointless since Alucard would just stomp in every single sense of the word. These abilities include shape-shifting, phasing, intangibility, telekinesis, illusion resistance through his third eye, hypnosis, menokinesis as he was able to move and control the blood of every single citizen in London simultaneously, summoning since he can summon demon dogs, bats, and familiars to fight alongside him, soul absorption as well as regeneration and nigh immortality as every single time he is damaged, a soul that he has absorbed replaces it. However, the extent of this regeneration is absolutely insane as Alucard is regenerated from lost limbs, being shot to pieces, impaled, blown up, and is even regenerated from tiny puddles of blood. This makes Alucard almost impossible to kill by conventional means unless he either runs out of souls or is stabbed by holy weaponry. Alucard in his verse is so powerful that he has to have limit restrictors placed on him ranging from levels 3 to 0, with each level down allowing him to use more and more of his power. Level 0 releases every single soul that Alucard has absorbed over his lifetime to either fight alongside him or overwhelm his enemies with through sheer numbers. This army of souls includes roughly 3,500,000 people, with some of these souls even having the same weaponry and abilities they had before they were consumed, such as Rip Van Winkle's telekinetic musket, which shoots bullets that can seemingly move in any direction he chooses, and Alejambra's mystical playing cards. Alucard carries 2 guns with him, a 4.54 Casal auto pistol and an Arms 13mm combat pistol nicknamed the Jackal. Both pistols have been shown to be far more powerful than most combat arms in use today, as they've blown through walls, torn human limbs off, and caused massive shockwaves akin to that of a much larger weapon such as a shell being fired from a tank. But now let's move on to his actual scaling. First off, Alucard was able to survive crashing the SR-71 Blackbird into an aircraft carrier, with this feat having been calculated to be around 55 tons of TNT or city block level. However, Alucard scales above Ceres's guns, which were scaled through pixel measurements to have a blast radius equal to anywhere from 44.7 tons of TNT or city block level to 825.1 tons of TNT or multi-city block level. However, it is worth noting that the calculation placing this feat at around 47 tons of TNT is likely more correct, since the previous calc placing it at around 825 tons of TNT mistook feet equals pixels instead of using the average method of multiplying pixels for feet instead of just pixels equals feet. But both options for this calc can still be used, since they both land at around multi-city block or city block level, so it really just depends on interpretation. But Alucard has multiple other feats that scale massively above this one. Alucard was able to create a mist that spanned over all of Dover, a southern town in England where Helsing likely takes place, as well as London in general. Through pixel measurements of the mist, they calculated the overall height to be roughly 30 meters, and then by multiplying the overall diameter and density of the mist, as well as the square area of Dover, this comes out to around 475.64 kilotons of TNT, or large town level. However, Alucard's most impressive feat comes from episode 10, where he was able to control and lift a sea of blood composed of the entirety of London's population in a short amount of time via his menokinesis. By finding the square area of London's streets and then finding the density of blood as well as the time frame that he was able to move the blood to him, which is around 2 minutes and 30 seconds in cinematic time, they found that the energy required for this is around 14 megatons of TNT or city level. So as a recap of his power, Alucard is at a low ball city block to multi-city block level, at a mid ball multi-city block to large town level, and at a high ball large town level to city level. Now there is one other instance that could potentially increase Alucard's AP, but it is extremely sketchy, and I'll explain why. In the original Helsing anime, Alucard was able to shine the Helsing logo across all of England. Now while you think this would be a country level feat, this feat is in neither the manga nor the OVA, so it's extremely sketchy to actually use it, as you can just say it's non-canon. So now that we have the likely non-canon feat out of the way, let's talk about his durability. While Alucard has been hurt by weapons like bullets, knives, bayonets, etc., he was also able to tank the city block level Blackbird explosion on the aircraft carrier, so he at least has city block level durability, but if you want to say he scales to his overall AP and general durability, he's anywhere from city block level to large town level or even city level. However, you can take his durability with a grain of salt. Now moving on to his speed, and unfortunately the only real speed feat for Alucard was him being able to catch Rip Van Winkle's bullet in his teeth. However, this feat is way more impressive than you may think. Van Winkle's bullets via more pixel calculations put the speed of it anywhere from Mach 33 to Mach 109, or well into high hypersonic. This is because the user measured the length of the Blackbird and compared it to the circumference of the trail that the bullet left, meaning that this is indeed far faster than a normal bullet because of the changed trajectory. And before anyone says it, yes, while the musket itself that Van Winkle uses appears to be normal, keep in mind that the bullet can be controlled telekinetically, so she can likely increase its overall velocity at will, making these calculations more believable if you didn't believe them already for whatever reason. So as an overall recap, Alucard has anywhere from city block level to city level attack potency, hypersonic plus to high hypersonic reaction speeds, and city block level to city level durability. So with all that being said, who wins? Well, surprisingly, this is a very close matchup if you really analyze both of them, especially given their different abilities and how they would clash with each other. But let's get down to the specifics and compare the two. First off, we can reasonably assume Alastor has more raw power than Alucard. This is because we could scale Alastor to Adam, who could disintegrate a large chunk of the hotel and the land beneath it, which we've already established to be worth around 375 megatons of TNT, which will be over 26 times greater than Alucard's 14 megaton feat. And even giving both Alucard and Alastor lowballed interpretations of their scaling, Alastor would still outclass him in raw power, since Alucard can reach up to 55 tons of TNT at his weakest, while Alastor can casually reach over a kiloton of TNT. So yes, even then, Alastor would still have the superior AP regardless, which he would definitely use to his advantage in this fight. Power goes to Alastor. However, speed is a different story, because even though both are pretty confidently hypersonic, Alucard completely outclasses Alastor in this regard. This is due to the fact that Alucard reacted to and caught Rip Van Winkle's bullet in his teeth, which we've already determined to be around Mach 109, which is around 4 times faster than the peak of Alucard's speed scaling, which in turn is likely an unquantifiable amount more than Mach 26. And adding on to the fact that Alucard has Rip Van Winkle's telekinetic bullet after absorbing her, it's safe to say that he would definitely be able to speed blitz Alastor most of the fight, not only with her bullet, but also with his raw speed. Funnily enough, even if we lowballed both of them, Alucard still holds the speed advantage. Hell, even if we highballed Alastor and lowballed Alucard, he would still be faster, since Alucard at his lowest still reaches Mach 33, while Alastor at his peak would be an unquantifiable amount more than Mach 26. And even then, that unquantifiable amount of speed higher than Mach 26 likely wouldn't matter in the long run, since he probably wouldn't be able to capitalize on it in time. Alucard definitely takes speed. Now onto durability, and in this case Alastor should also take this category as well, since we've already determined that his overall durability should scale to his AP and vice versa, and because of this it would be extremely difficult for Alucard to meaningfully damage him even with his pistols and all his other abilities. Durability goes to Alastor. Now as for abilities, this is where it starts to even out, since both have unique abilities that could specifically counter the other, such as Alucard's tentacles, umbrokinesis, teleportation, and shield creation. That will make surprise attacks extremely difficult for Alucard to accomplish. However, Alucard's level 0, overwhelming amount of lives, intangibility, and hypnosis could also offer some counters to Alastor's abilities as well. It really depends on who uses them more efficiently in the fight, and in those regards I'd have to give a slight advantage to Alucard. This is because Alucard has shown to have a couple more abilities than Alastor, as well as the fact that Alucard's abilities have shown more potential for use in combat than Alastor's. So abilities and hacks goes to Alucard, however you could indeed make an argument for Alastor having the better abilities. And as for experience, that also goes to Alucard, since not only is he hundreds to possibly thousands of years old, but he has also fought for centuries on end, while Alastor is at best 150 years old, given that he died in 1933, and you could say that has-been takes place in the modern day. This makes it likely that he hasn't fought nearly as many people as Alucard has. However, there is another aspect of this that could potentially even things out on both sides, and that's battle IQ. While both have fought a wide variety of opponents, I'd actually say they're pretty much equal here, since both have shown to be pretty strategic in their own right, with Alastor holding his own against Adam with this skill alone, who has thousands of years of experience, while Alucard has shown to set traps, use the environment to his advantage, and strategize mid-battle, like with his fight against Walter. While you could make strong arguments for either, both are surprisingly cunning and would likely use their intelligence in this fight through setting traps and sneak attacking each other. So I would say they're pretty much equal in this regard. So a basic recap of the stats goes a little something like this. So with all that being said, who really wins? Well, because this is such a close matchup, you could honestly argue for both sides, but given their overall stats and comparing them with one another, I'd have to say Alucard would probably win. The reason why I think Alucard would win is primarily through his hacks and speed. You see, as I've already discussed, Alucard's abilities and potential use for said abilities in combat would provide way more leeway in a fight where your opponent severely outclasses you in power. A great example of this is level 0. Level 0 allows for a level of overwhelming force that Alastor could certainly hold off, at least for a while, considering his shields and tentacles, as well as the fact that he could summon his voodoo dolls to help fend off the army. However, keep in mind that Alastor would have to fight 3,500,000 undead all at once, meaning that the level of multitasking he would have to do could definitely overwhelm him given enough time, allowing Alucard to weaken Alastor down with his superior speed and abilities. But you could also make the same arguments for Alastor winning through his superior strength and durability and combining his summoning with his other abilities like Umbrakinesis. He could potentially whittle down Alucard's souls one by one until he can land the killing blow himself. Again, it's really impressive how close this matchup is once you really look at it. To put into perspective on how close I think that this matchup is, if we were to run this fight back, I don't know, 100 times, I'd say that Alucard would win around 53 out of 100 times, while Alastor would win roughly 47 out of 100 times. Yeah, that's how close this matchup actually is. But the numbers don't lie. So that means that in the end, while Alastor will probably push Alucard to the absolute limit of his power, the Vampire King's superior speed, hacks, and experience just barely edged out the Radio Demon. Alucard wins, high to extreme difficulty. I guess we finally know who wins between a true demon and a true vampire. I mean, after all, a demon can kill a man, but
it takes a man in order to kill a monster.